What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Got a few updates coming up for you guys right now, but for this update, I want to just talk about The Last of Us Part 2. Recently, Naughty Dog and Sony finally took the wraps off of Naughty Dog's sequel to The Last of Us, right? Coming out next year on the PS4. We got an official release date, which I'll mention, as well as an in-depth preview and mini impressions from a lot of the gaming media. This game is probably the most anticipated game on my list. Last of Us was one of my favorite and is literally in my top 5 best games that I feel like I've ever played. So this one is looking great. The sequel's looking even better. And I just want to talk about it. Tell you guys what's to be excited about and what to look forward to. Check me out after the break. So The Last of Us Part 2 is coming out for the PlayStation 4 in February of 2020. February 21st to be exact, of 2020. Now this means that, that Q1 is absolutely loaded next year, as I already talked about. You can go check out my most anticipated games list. But this is a big game. This is a very big deal. The Last of Us was one of the last big, first party games to come out on the PlayStation 3. It came out earlier the same year that PlayStation 4 released, and it was kind of one of the big swan songs for the PlayStation 3. And what a swan song it was. Technically speaking, at the time, it was great. It really showed what the PS3 can do. It was really cinematic. The characters were just so detailed and so emotive. Like the atmosphere in the game, the setting and the environments was great. The pacing was great. The storytelling was amazing. The game was on another level. It was one of those games that when I played it, it just kind of said, this is like the pinnacle of what this medium can produce, like what the video game medium can produce. It evoked emotions. It made you feel things that you would feel while reading a great book, while you might feel while watching a great movie. But then it's a game that you can actually control and influence as well. You felt the tension. Amazing game. To this day, top 5 of the best games that I've ever played. I still say that. I remember sitting down when I first started playing it. My wife was there, and she just watched the first, that first intro scene, like the first 15 minutes of the game. But within 5 minutes of playing, she was in tears. That says a lot. And she noticed it. She was like, whoa, like why? Like I'm barely got in the game, barely got in the character, but it was the way it was presented. It was that deep, and she was invested, as was I, of course. The storytelling was better than most Hollywood movies, as far as I'm concerned. And the gameplay was really precise, and also fun. It was a fun game. It had a great challenge to it, element of strategy to it, Great game. So we finally get The Last of Us Part 2, and we've seen a couple of trailers of this game over the years. You know that the game takes place about 5 years after the first game. But needless to say, the game at its core is, at least the first game revolved around 2 characters, an older man named Joel and a younger woman named Ellie. And Ellie was, at the time of the first game, I think she was around 13. She kind of was like a younger teenager. And they're in this post-apocalyptic world that was overcome by this fungal infection, which is fairly unique. Basically cause people to kind of become zombie-like, but they're not zombies. They're these infected. They call them the infected, but they act like zombies. They're very aggressive, very difficult to kill. They're screaming. They're not human, and depending on how long they've been infected, you actually see the different levels of the infection. Like some of them look still somewhat human, still have a human-like form, and some of them just you can't even recognize any human features on them at all. So in the context of this post-apocalyptic world, in the beginning of The Last of Us, the first one, we saw basically, spoiler alert, that Joel loses his daughter in the midst of these people kind of going crazy as the infection is just breaking out. And he's trying to escape, and they're trying to escape. And she gets shot, not even by, infected. She gets shot by some humans who are trying to control the infected. So that's the short story. So he meets Ellie later, and obviously he takes kind of a protector role and a liking to Ellie because I'm pretty sure that she reminded him of his daughter, and he felt obligated to try to protect her in this world. And you go through the journey with them, which has a lot of crazy moments, a lot of memorable moments, and at the end of it, both of them are still alive. I'll just say that much. And they're trying to find refuge. They're going from camp to camp. There's this secret or somewhat secret organization of survivors called the Fireflies. They're kind of like a resistance group in a way, but it's one of the few refuges that's still around. And they're trying to find that. That's kind of most of what you're trying to do in the first game. They eventually find it. Turns out to not be what they thought, and it's not really a refuge at all. So as they continue to kind of keep moving on, they both survive. I'll leave it at that. So we go into the second game, and we knew everything that the Naughty Dog has shown about the second game has focused on Ellie, and even as Ellie being the main player. In the first game, Joel was your main player. That's who you played as. Ellie was a companion that was mostly controlled by the AI, by the computer. Second game, we see Ellie be in focus, and we see that she's out to get revenge for some reason we're not 100% sure of. So we know that we play at least most of the game as Ellie, or at least a big chunk of the game as Ellie. But we also know from this latest trailer that Joel is back. And that's important because when they first showed the game nearly 2 years ago, they showed Joel, like, it was like this really kind of weird teaser concept trailer. And they showed Ellie playing the guitar, and then they showed Joel. But we didn't know what that was in the context of the game. And everything else they showed of the actual game has focused on Ellie. So this is the first time we see like Joel is actually back. He's going to be a big part of the story. We don't know if we'll play as him or not, and whether they switch roles and Joel's the companion now, but you definitely get to play as him. So it's kind of what we know, and it's good that they're keeping it a mystery because we don't know really what's going to happen. We just know that Ellie is older. Now, I want to talk about the technology. There was one trailer that they showed. It was the second trailer, I believe, that they ever showed, where The Last of Us Part 2 literally made my jaw drop. And I said that the graphics that I saw in that trailer was the best real-time graphics that I had ever seen in a game, up to that point. In a game. Now, there's some other real-time graphics demos that may look prettier and whatever, but to say that this is a game that you'll be playing, this was insane. Now, we know Naughty Dog are wizards, and their games have always been at the pinnacle of technology, and they've always done amazing things with PlayStation consoles to make PlayStation consoles look like the world's most advanced gaming machines ever out there, even when they're old and long in the tooth. But this was different. I mean, the animations and the details were through the roof. I mean, and not just the global animations of like the person walking or something like that. It was like the facial animations, the articulation when players spoke, in their eyes, their cheeks, the bone structure in the face you can see, the skin textures and the skin shaders that they use. The skin had a look of realism and the surface that I've just never seen before. The environment in this particular scene, it was at night, and it was by this bonfire, and there's a bunch of characters out there, so it's a lot of shadows, and the fire casting on the light. It absolutely did not look like something that was possible on a PlayStation 4. I'll say that much. And even then, people were very skeptical. Needless to say, that was now like over a year ago. The latest trailer, and actually they showed a couple of trailers since then, they didn't look quite as good. We've seen some actual gameplay though. They didn't look quite as good, but still like the best among the best looking games out there, for sure. I mean, it's still at the very top of the pile, so to speak. Animations look great. There's a lot of detail in the latest trailer. Characters still look really great. Things like the grass is something also that looks like unusually good, compared to most games out there, in terms of detail, in terms of shading, and then it also has a good physics and animation system with it, as like you see Ellie going through the grass and stuff like that, and then so great attention to detail. The other thing I want to point out about technology is the AI, and you can see it in the trailer if you watch it. I have links to it in the video description, but man. The first game had pretty good AI. in terms of it wasn't just like it's a lot of stealth mechanics to the game. Obviously, you want to sneak up on these creatures. It wasn't in your best interest to try to go in there guns blazing for sure. And yeah, it was good in that the way they traverse the environment. A lot of games, when you do stealth, you'll see an enemy like on a specific rigid route, and they walk up or around, or they just kind of follow a path, and they just kind of keep looping back and forth, right? But in The Last of Us Part 1, we saw characters that can literally go out a window or, go across different rooms, can get past obstacles pretty easily, stuff like that. Go up and down, had a vertical element, go up and down floors and stuff like that to find you and to chase you. The AI, from what we've seen in the trailer for Last of Us Part 2, is on a whole nother level. And that's a good thing, especially in the generation where the CPU has been so limiting that we really haven't seen much in the way of like AI improvements in most games, for the most part. Naughty Dog is definitely pushing the envelope here. They added dogs, and dogs obviously have a different way of sensing you with smell, so they can literally sense not just where you're at, visually, and be a line of sight, but they can sense where you've been somewhere, and they'll follow the scent to get to where you have gone to. That's something that's fairly new. We haven't seen something like that in a video game before. But yeah, again, the AI is traversing the levels. Each AI enemy has their own identity, and they're aware of that, and they're aware of the other enemies that are around them, like literally by name. So there's a personal element to the enemy that, again, is not usual. And the way they engage with each other and the way they engage with you seems to be completely dynamic. Now, we know it has to be some level of scripting and programming involved there, but when you see how they act, it seems to be dynamic. When Ellie is engaged or fighting one character, or one enemy might have seen her or found her, and how the other ones come to investigate or kind of come to the attention. She might kill one of the enemies, and you'll see like the other enemies around her literally get angry, get upset, and they kind of enter a more aggressive mode, to try to get her. You can tell they're just emotional, even, it's deep, and it's something that, again, I'm proud that they're pushing the envelope. And this is kind of things that we see from a lot of the Sony, especially the Sony first party studios, in terms of how they really use the technology. So, again, technology in Last of Us Part 2, and we've only seen glimpses of it, but it's going to look great. We've already seen weather effects look amazing, rain, snow, stuff like that, wind, lighting that looks great, daytime, nighttime. So really, really looking forward to it. Again, it's no coincidence. It's coming at the end of the PlayStation 4 cycle. It's coming out next year, which is the same year that the PlayStation 5 is coming out. So this is really analogous to what happened with The Last of Us Part 1. And, looking forward to it, man. It's going to be great. I'm making this video because, man, like I said, Last of Us is really important to me. The franchise, the first game, and, I haven't really played anything like it since. So the idea of this is coming out again. It's like, man, it's great to go back in here. If you haven't played the first one, there's plenty of ways to do it. You can, obviously, if you have a PlayStation 4, there's a remaster version that's built for the PlayStation 4. And you also can play the game now on PlayStation Now, on your PS4, or just on your PC if you don't have a PS4. But I just tell you that this game is definitely worth trying. It's definitely worth playing. And I want people to be aware of that and be aware of that this game is coming out, because this is already going in like a game of the year type of contender. The last thing I'll mention is, of course, the big question, the big elephant in the room. Is there going to be a PS5 version? What are they going to do with that? There's been a lot of rumors and rumblings that a lot of like the Sony big titles that have come out in the last year or so, gearing up going into the PlayStation 5 launch, will be somehow either re-released in kind of like a remastered format for the PlayStation 5, or will work in some magical way via backwards compatibility where the games will also be enhanced on the PlayStation 5. And I don't know right now exactly, how that would look. Sony has been still pretty coy about that. We do know that it will support backwards compatibility for PlayStation 4. So Last of Us Part 2 will absolutely work on the PlayStation 5. How it will work, and if it will be enhanced and how so, is kind of the question, but it absolutely will work. But there's been big rumors about that. Now, judging by the early videos that we saw from Last of Us, where I specifically said that it looked like something that was well beyond a PlayStation 4, I would not be surprised if Last of Us Part 2 is kind of being developed with PlayStation 5 in mind. Now, when I say that, it's being developed with the PlayStation 4 as the baseline. We get that. But Naughty Dog along the way is well aware that PlayStation 5 is coming out. They are well aware of what it is, and they are actually writing and designing some elements into the game to be able to take advantage of the extra hardware when it runs on that game. Again, not a true PlayStation 5 title, but there will. I believe that we will see that the game will run enhanced on PlayStation 5. You know, obviously things like resolution and stuff and texture detail, stuff like that. But we may see just more sophisticated algorithms for rendering. We may see some improvements to like the AI even and stuff like that. Obviously not enough to make it like a different experience, but you know, improvements that will be noticeable. Just keep that in mind. You know, if you want to have the absolute best experience and you have the money, you plan on getting a next gen console at launch or near launch, you know, you're going to be able to play a lot of these games in an enhanced fashion. You know, resolution, performance, stuff like that, graphics on the next gen console. So I think that's going to happen with The Last of Us as well. But we'll find out soon enough. PlayStation 5 news is coming. I'm about to make another video about that, which I think a lot of you will like. And we'll, you know, the reveal for the PlayStation 5, the full reveal, is expected to be sometime in Q1, most likely February. So we'll know soon enough. But that's all for now. Look out for some other videos coming out pretty soon here. But until the next time, thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment below if you're watching this video, please. And I will see you soon. Thanks.